Liftoff. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is David Brower. I'm here with Philip McKernan. And we are just going to check that we are good, but we are so delighted to be here together. It's nice to see you, Philip.
Absolutely, likewise. And you didn't butcher my name. You got it right.
You see? McKernan. Again, like I said to you offline, I thought it was McKernan. Caring, this kind of thing, but that's okay.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't agree with that.
That's in another night. Yeah. Exactly. Well, it looks like we're live on Facebook. If there's anyone out here that's able to give us a little bit of juice here to tell us that you can hear us when you come on here, we'll see if the people get on. But yeah, this is great to be here. So where are you, Philippe?
I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
That's your home. That's good.
Yeah, I am indeed. I'm home and I'm not traveling for a little bit, which is good.
That's great. I think the last time we saw each other was actually in Boulder.
Yes, correct. We had a juice or a lunch here, and we had a brief encounter, and then off you went again, whizzing around the world.
Yeah. Well, partially. You're whizzing around the world. So I was just in India, actually, and I was wondering, are you doing another trip out there soon?
I just came back.
Did you just come back?
Yeah, I did a trip there in, oh my goodness. No, when was it? It was, let's just say 2 months ago. I mean, there's so much going on in my life right now. I don't remember. I'm no good at dates anyway. I never remember dates. So brought a group over and we basically went to Delhi, and then we did the highest navigable road trip across the Himalayas up into the Kashmir region. And we did quite a bit of giving back over there, working with, went to probably the most extraordinary project that I've ever gone to, where abandoned seniors have been sent to die and been abandoned by their families. And that was haunting, but beautiful at the same time.
Oh, amazing. Well, I was just in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama is, which was quite exceptional place, different kind of experience than that, but that's really great. Yeah, India is really amazing. It's like people seem to either really get it, and it doesn't kind of emotionally abuse them. And though other people go and it's almost like too much of a sensory overload for them, and some of the stuff they see is a little bit difficult. Is that what you were sensing with the people you went with, or?
I think India has the capacity to blow you open. Unlike any other country. I mean, I'd say, with respect, I'm completely biased, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. This piece, I think Ireland is a similar thing for me, obviously, because I think there's a depth and a history there. But I think India can blow you open in a different way, unlike anywhere else in the world, if you allow it to. If you go with a critical eye, if you go with a sense of, not allowing yourself to let go, if you go with a sense of control, which is an epidemic in the world today, I think India is going to challenge you in a not so good way. You'll start to close down emotionally and mentally. But if you go with an open mind, open heart, open soul, I think India can get into you and it can penetrate you in a way unlike any other country in the world. And it's not India, it's what you do in India. I mean, you can go and sit in a 5-star hotel in Delhi and drink coffee and then go back and say, yeah, I did the India thing. You know what I'm talking about. You've got to get out. You've got to experience it. You've got to let go.
Yeah.
And India will blow you open. And I've seen the most extraordinary transformations of people who were like freaking out about the dirt and the sounds and the noise and the poverty, for them to just land into India and for it to be probably or arguably the most amazing experience in their lives. I don't want to piss anybody off, but there's a gentleman called James who's live here with us today. And he was actually meant to be on the trip with us, but he got sick. So actually the trip was a disaster. He was lucky he didn't go. It was a shit.
Yeah, it was the worst trip ever. I didn't miss anything. Good to see you, James. Glad that you can hear us okay.
Likewise.
That's good. Hey, Mark America is there. Hey, Mark. Welcome. So yeah, it's cool. I agree with you about India, though.
By the way, one quick thing is I didn't want to go to India. My wife has wanted to go to India for years. So God love her. I'll never forget this day sitting down, and she's sitting down and we're working tirelessly on this agenda, this route and this ideas. I've got these ideas that people are saying, no, you can't do that. You can't. And I'm saying, no, we're going to do it regardless of what you think. We're going to make this happen. And I remember looking over, my wife was tearing up and I said, are you okay? She goes, no, I'm just emotional. I said, why? And she goes, I've always, and it wasn't a jealousy. It was like being so happy for us going. I never wanted to go. So that pisses her off a little bit. And in a good way. But I think that's part of the reason why I went there. And I sometimes think we need to go to the places that we don't think we want to go to understand who we really are.
That's really beautifully said. Yeah, that's why I like to travel to such places, definitely. It's definitely like going to another, it's like going to an environment, a context that takes you so out of all your references that you can actually see who you are in a place when there is no, nothing that you can grab onto, right?
Yeah.
It's really where you get to really see what you're made of in a lot of ways. It's really,
no scaffolding to hold on to or hide behind.
Yeah. Yeah. There was one of my friends is an engineer, and we were looking at some of the scaffolding in the building in Dharamsala, and he took pictures, like 50,000 pictures of the construction site they have, which is quite different than what we have here in France. But yeah, completely twist your head around, which is such a great thing.
One thing I did there, and again, I'm happy to move on. I'm sure you've got a direction where we're heading. But one thing I did there, which I just want to share, which I don't talk about a lot, is we went to this abandoned seniors compound. I think is the only way to describe it. Saying it's a home would be way too, would be exaggerating a little bit too much. And one of the things you do there as a volunteer is offer a volunteer to wash the men or the women, and in my case, the men. And my heart was pounding because I knew deep down this is what I needed to volunteer to do, because it scared the shit out of me. And I remember putting my hand up. I can literally feel the emotion coming back into my body right now. And the guy said, "Oh, you're in." And then one of my clients who came with us put his hand up, and he joined me. And we washed 50 men over a period of, I don't know, 2 hours or an hour and a half. Or, I don't know. And I this is not what I do. I don't wash people. Okay. I've never washed in my life before. I was thinking that maybe someday I might be either privileged enough or unlucky enough to have to wash my own parents if they're too old or whatever. That's the only context I have. And I can tell you right now, and I know sometimes when we say things like, "Oh, I'm a changed person," or "it changed me," and it sounds so corny or cliche, it has changed me. And I don't know how, and I don't know why yet. But it was one of the most humbling, spiritual, most beautiful things I've ever done in my life. And yet I would have sat here thinking that would probably have been the most horrendous thing possible that I could do on this earth in advance.
Amazing. Well, I wasn't quite doing that there, but now I know what I can look for. That's genius. We are here with Philip McKernan, and we're going to kind of kick things off formally here. We've been kind of just getting caught up and talking about India and some other things. I'm absolutely delighted to have Philip here with me today, who I haven't seen in person in several months, but who I know, somewhat. I've had the opportunity to experience his, very impactful, meaningful, jazzy speaking, very raw and authentic and provocative. In front of really spectacular groups, mastermind groups, big events. Maybe you yourself had a chance to see him speak, and if not, I would highly encourage that. Philippe, just to give a quick bio here, we're not going to go over the top because there's so much to say about you, and I know you're a very humble man. Philippe is somebody who's really here helping people find who they are and who they want to be, helping them with a tremendous amount of clarity and connection with themselves and their souls and their heart and their guts and their instincts, trying to get people out of their heads and stuff. And he really does this in so many different ways with so many different vehicles. He's made a beautiful movie, which is named Give and Grow. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Give and Grow. Wasn't that in India also, though?
That's primarily in India, yeah.
It was Indian also, yeah. So filmmaker, book writer. He's written a couple books. One of them we're going to talk about later today, called One Last Talk, which is a key about the reason why we're talking today. He's also coached, infinitely variety of people in the entrepreneurial corporate space, Olympic athletes. He's consulted with the Pentagon. Lots of high-flying performers, the billionaires of this, that, and the other. Lots of really amazing people who are, stuck, confused, think they know where they are, who they are, And, Philip comes in there and gives them kind of a stab of clarity and really transforms people's lives in a really meaningful, spectacular way, I would say. Very provocative kind of personality in some ways, but also very deep, raw, very connective, big heart. He's really seeking a lot of ways to get us out of our head. And obviously I resonate a lot with Philippe's work and what I do in the world and what I'm bringing, the way that I would bringing it, I would say above all. And so I'm honored here to bring Philippe in to come and talk about all the different things that he interacts with in life, the way that he's doing it. And hopefully we'll get some really juicy tidbits here, which will be some probably that are part of the stable, and hopefully will provoke some new connections here while we're speaking together. So I want to thank Philippe for coming to join us here today, and start with just a little kind of question here, if I may.
Go.
Which would be, why are people feeling like they're not really clear about their lives? This feels like a modern phenomena for a certain part of the population, that they don't feel like they have clarity in their life, and so they somehow feel a little bit off purpose or lost, or don't feel good with themselves or in their relationships. Or why is this such a phenomena today?
There's so many directions we could go with that question, in no particular order. I think one is because people are waking up. I picked this cup up this morning. It was kind of coincidental, if you can see this, but it's a moose, and it says, I moose, wake up. I know it's a little bit of a gimmick, but I think people are waking up and they're realizing that, going and, maybe even in a similar vein or path than our parents and previous generations did. While we could argue it was less complex, to some extent they're questioning, and they're starting to realize that they can have meaning and they can have a degree of purpose through the work and through the lens of how they live. I think another thing is, I think there's a lot of noise out there. I think on the flip side of this, there's so much information, and while I've just released a book, I would be the first to say, when someone comes and coaches with me, I ask them to stop reading all books for 6 months at least, just for a period of time, because the majority of people I work with are obsessively absorbing so much information, and they're reading copious amounts of books, and they're reading and downloading copious amounts of podcasts. And we've never had an abundance of information like we do today, nor have we ever had accessibility to it. Look what we're doing right now. It's extraordinary. We're connecting in different parts of the world. Other people can join in. So there's upsides to it, but I think that there has a shadow side to this. So there's a lot of noise, and I think people are not trusting themselves. They're listening and they're modeling their lives on other people, and they're diluting the essence of who they are. And I think what my job is to try and remember. My job is not about teaching them anything new. My job is on learning. My job is helping them strip all the shit back, all the stuff they think, all the stuff that they believe, all the stuff that they've lived that hasn't served them, and get them back to the essence of who they are. And then I think finally, there's another piece which might feel counterintuitive, but is deeply true in the world today. And that is this incredible realization that I've had over the last 6 or 12, probably aggressively over the last 12 months, is that a lot of people will come to me for the clarity that they don't actually want. And when you get close to somebody's truth, when you get close to helping somebody uncover the fact that they're out of alignment in an area of their life, forget about what the answer is. That's easy. That unfolds when they get truthful. And when you get close to that reality, a lot of people clam up, a lot of people get defensive, a lot of people disappear, a lot of people retract, a lot of people judge me, shoot the messenger so you don't have to listen to the message, and so on and so forth. So there's a hesitation within us, within our psyche, to actually really uncover who we are, because we'd rather fail doing the shit we don't want to do than run the risk of failing doing what we're meant to do on this earth.
And why is that, would you say?
I think we care too much what people think on a very basic level. Anybody that says they don't care what people think, I think they're either eluding themselves, they're not being particularly honest, they're unaware, or they're full of shit, or a combination of all the above. I think we care deeply what humanity thinks. I mean, I literally saw a woman almost choke on a piece of steak in a restaurant. I was just on my way to do the Heimlich maneuver or whatever, which I've only had to do once in my life with my wife, ironically. And the first thing she cleared before I got to her, before I made the move to help her, and her first instinct was to go, did anybody see my embarrassing moment? She was technically dying in that moment. And the first thing was embarrassment about what people thought. When my wife choked and I've never talked about this before, when I cleared the piece of steak in her mouth, she was literally choking beside me. And it was weirdly frightening. Her reaction was one of judgment towards me because it was deflection. It was a weird thing. So we care deeply what people think, but when you take the people closest to us, the peers and our family, you can multiply that by 1,000. And I think that has a massive influence. And that to me is representative that a lot of us are not as comfortable in our own skins as either we think we are or that we'd like to be.
Mm. And what is for you the key to leading people out of that?
When you say
getting over this sense of, this self, what do you call it? Self-consciousness, that we're so worried what other people think.
Yeah, to me, I'm the biggest thing for me is facing truth. So for example, Apple, and I'm sure other companies are doing, but Apple are finally, maybe I'm just really slow in technology, but maybe it's been around for 5 years, but recently they've started to help you understand how much screen time you're using on the device. And yet when I do the same thing in my work, people go, yeah, but how do I fix it? What's the 4-step system? Apple are simply creating a level of awareness of how much screen time you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And they trust by allowing you understand that, then you have the choice to put in your own strategies because we're big enough, bold enough, wise enough, and ugly enough to figure this shit out on our own. And what people underestimate is they go, okay, assuming I'm not that comfortable in my own skin, assuming that. Now, how do I fix it? And I go, hang on, assume nothing. What is your truth? Let's get to the core of that. Let's understand that. Let's live in that for a moment. Let's live in the uncomfortableness of the uncomfortableness for a period of time. Let's understand where that came from. Then we'll start pivoting and making changes. And by the way, when you understand your discomfort, when you understand your pain, you will find your own solutions. You will find the way yourself. You don't need a coach to tell you exactly what you should do for A, B, C, and D. So I think we jump to the solution too fast. And I think we should sit within, in many cases, the uncomfortableness of the discomfort, the pain, of where we're out of alignment first and really understand that. So we don't repeat history again. The reason that there's going to be another global meltdown and every single CEO from every single bank has agreed that, yes, we are going to do the same thing again, is because we learn from the past, but we don't basically allow that to drop into our emotion, into almost a spiritual realm, so we can feel it and we can start feeling energetically when the same thing's happening again and therefore adjust.
Beautiful. Nicely expressed. So let's shift a little bit and talk about money, because money also seems to play quite a big role in people either speaking their truth, living their truth, living authentically, having, great marriages, great relationship with their kids, not burning out, all this kind of stuff. So, and I know that you've written a book related to that. So I guess the question is, when do people really know that they're living too much for money and not enough for the rest of really what makes life worth living, to my heart?
Wow. Didn't expect this. I think, when they're telling themselves that they're doing it for different reasons. So for example, people will say to me things like, yeah, but I'm working really hard right now for the next 5 years. And I know I'm not around my family as much. And when I am, I'm just not as mentally present as I would like to be, but I'm doing it for my kids. And when we're trying to justify and rationalize, I think that's an indicator that maybe we've tipped over to a point where maybe we're a little bit too, focused on the economics to some extent. And my one thing I would just ask parents, and some people get defensive with this one, but what I would ask or encourage people to do is just sit your kids down and ask them, are they okay with this? Because we often use our kids as a reason or an excuse to live in a particular manner, telling ourselves that we're doing it for them, but they haven't necessarily bought in. And I've yet to meet one parent many years later who said, I wish my parents worked harder. I wish my parents made more money. I'm not saying that people in poverty wish their parents didn't have better luck with money and so on, but in essence, I rarely meet people who want their parents to work harder or wanted their parents to work harder. So just if you're doing it for your kids and that's the story you're telling yourself, just make sure that they know and sit down and say, Johnny, I'm not going to be at your soccer game. And when I am, I'll be on my phone. But just so you know, the reason for that is because I'm making millions of dollars and we're all going to be set. And then I'm going to be the perfect dad in 20 years time. Now I'm being a little bit flippant to make a point. I think a lot of us don't see the cost of a lot of our pursuits until years later. And a lot of the other thing we do is we often put off the things that feel very connected to who we are. So I was going to write a book, David, and everyone who listens to this today or in the future never has to write the book, even if I write it, because the premise is so simple. I'm going to give it to you right now. And that is, I was going to write a book called Wake Up Call. And Wake Up Call was going to basically interview people, and I've done a lot of the research, interview people in their lives, what they were doing. The wake-up call, which in essence is often either a health scare or a mental breakdown, the loss of somebody else, facing your own mortality. And then what did they do differently? Now, some of them did nothing differently. And I think that's down to a self-worth issue within them. But the ones that pivoted and changed, in essence, every single one of them used different language, different terminology. But in essence, every one of them said they simply gave themselves permission to do the shit they always wanted to do. That's it. And what my work is trying to do is trying to wake up people just a little bit sooner so they don't wait until the perfect day, the perfect time, the perfect bank balance in order to give themselves permission to at least begin to experiment with these things. I think we put life on hold for a period of time that's going to happen down the line. And our relationship to money is key. I would ask everybody listening today if we could just take just a moment, and if I could ask you a very specific question. Come up with one word that describes or captures how you feel about money. Now, would you think about it? How you feel about money? I would like everyone just to, whatever that word is, share it if you want to today, or sit with this. And what you'll find in a room of, say, 12 people in a coaching capacity or whatever, you'll find love, hate, necessary, energy, whatever. This dichotomy, this melting pot, this bowl of just, different, and the amount of people that have a very unusual, dysfunctional, or challenging relationship to money is staggering. And yet they wonder why sabotage shows up in their life as they move forward.
Mm-hmm. And would you, maybe this applies for people who are actually already successful or, relatively kind of on their way or making our money. What about people who are struggling to kind of make ends meet, or at least they feel that they're in this kind of position? How would you share this relationship to money? This idea of,
I think it's really important to look at where our relationship to money is very important. I always remember sitting with a couple, a number of coaching clients, and there was two women. I'll never forget the day. And they said, "Excuse me, Philip, just a quick question. How long are we spending on this subject?" And I said, "I'm thinking we're going to spend a half a day." And they're going to go, half a day in money, like how to spend it or how to make it. I go, neither. Your relationship to money. And I'll never forget the two of them. They're like, Jesus, did I sign up for this crap? 45 minutes later, one of them was vibrating with anger and the other one was bawling her eyes out, because both of them had realized, like they'd never before realized, that they'd made a lot of major life decisions purely based on money. Now, making decisions based on allowing money to be an influencer in that decision, that's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that they literally chose careers, university, entire career paths, where to live based on money, yet they told themselves a different story. And when we brought them back into the past, how they grew up around money, what was the charge around money? Was money discussed when you were at home as a kid? Was money hidden? Was it one of these things we'd never talk about? Was there a negative charge? And what you'll find is the research will show us that couples break up. The number one reason that couples break up is because of financial pressure. I disagree completely and utterly on that. It will expose the cracks in a relationship. When I went down to literally $200, and by the way, for anybody, if they're sitting there going, yeah, well, that's easy for you, McKernan, because you have all this money. I had $200 in the bank account. I'm sure there's people way worse off than me. And a massive hole in the ground with a few properties we owned, which were worth less than shit in Ireland because the economy fell off them. And that's when I decided I was going to step into coaching. And coaching is not the most lucrative path, certainly for the first 7 or 8 or 10 years of year grafting, because I knew that the pain of not doing what I wanted to do started to really catch up and past the discomfort of actually stepping in and doing the very thing I was scared of. And we had $200 in the bank account. And my wife said to me, and with tons of debt, and my wife said to me, this is not working. I'm not going back to Canada. And in that moment, the pain, I often find, and I don't mean this in a condescending, judgmental way, I find that people that are struggling to bring in money sometimes, they're too busy chasing money. Money is they're really, they need the money. The energy behind them is they need the money so badly. And I remember being there and I just couldn't make it work. And then I kept trying to do things that were out of alignment within my own soul to bring the money in. So then I would have the freedom to go and do what I love. And I know it's a great story. And I know it might even make logical sense. I've never seen anybody master that. I've never seen one human being be able to spend 5 or 10 years doing something they don't want to do in order to free themselves to go and do what they want to do. It comes at too big a cost. You've betrayed yourself. I know it's dramatic, but you've betrayed yourself for those 8 or 10 years. You can't just jump on a different bike and go down a different path and everything's awesome. There's an energetic price you need to pay for that, or you do pay universally.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I've always felt also that people don't really use their money. This is probably a bit judgmental also, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel that some people don't really know how to spend their money very well, right? For example, when people go on holiday, some people say, "Oh, I can't go on holiday because it's going to cost $10,000 to go." I'm like, "What are you talking about? To go there, it doesn't cost $10,000. I mean, where are you staying? How are you flying? What do you do?" I mean, I think that people have a tendency to not very well manage their money. They don't really renegotiate their mortgages in a way. They don't want to get things paid off as quickly as possible. There's all these kinds of things that are happening that are probably part of their malaise, and postponing of actually getting to kind of their truth with money. And this delaying just makes things, you're constantly beholden to this money thing, which almost seems like it becomes an addiction that you end up wanting to live that way.
Yeah. The saddest thing that I see around money is that people believe they need money to make an impact in the world. And that to me is a tragedy, like an absolute tragedy. I'm not suggesting, we built an orphanage in Peru and we raised, we set out to raise $50,000. We raised $75,000.
Awesome.
We built an amazing orphanage. And I say we, I mean, it wasn't me, it was our community, it was my wife, etc. And brilliant. And do you need money to do that? Well, yes, you do to a certain extent. But in actual fact, the trips that we've done, and that's why we created the film Give and Grow, is to challenge people into giving time, giving of yourself, putting yourself in environments where you are helping a human one-to-one, and to realize that actually, writing a check for $1,000 or $100 is great, but scientifically, you do not get the same feedback. You do not get the sense of meaning and purpose in your life when you write a check, regardless of how big the check is. And I think, the billionaires, that many of the now publicized billionaires that are coming through where they've made billions, and then they look at their lives and they realize there's something missing. And they say, right now, we're going to spend the rest of our life giving all this money away. They're almost still chasing that sense of meaning. What I'm here to say is categorically the science. I've done the social experiments. I've brought people to Peru and Guatemala and India and all these different places. Is one of the things I do. And to watch them contribute to, an orphan in Peru or a disabled older human being in India, it is absolutely life-changing. I mean, it fundamentally changes you. And when you're giving gifts and you're giving money, it actually gets in the way of connecting with a human in a soul-to-soul capacity.
Yeah. So true, so true. I want to welcome Marie-Noëlle, who's here in France, Michael Fine, who's here in France, who was with me in India, and Stu Saunders. Hey, friends. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Philip McKernan. We are talking about many things, including soon his recent book, One Last Talk. So kind of an important question. I mean, do you think that every entrepreneur should be modeling Steve Jobs?
Absolutely and utterly not.
Whoops. Why is that?
I think the problem with modeling is is the modeling. So if I model a part of somebody, let's just say I take 5 entrepreneurs, okay, and I decide to model aspects of their lives, assuming that if I follow them and model what they do in certain areas, then I'll have the same or similar results.
Yeah.
The problem is that we don't know all of the person. So if you want to achieve all of what Steve Jobs achieved in terms of his financial success, his impact in the world of technology, which, by the way, is not all upside. There's a downside. He arguably created or streamlined one of the most disconnected tools on earth. I'm an iPhone guy. I love the iPhone. I love Apple. But if you think about it, he basically brought, he connected the world in a way it's never been connected. And I think I think science has the capacity often to finally tell us what we've already felt intuitively previously 100 years before or 20 years before. And I think history is going to show that, yeah, he did a great job. He's a great marketer. He helps create design, great products, but he also helped in this absolute tsunami of disconnectedness in the world through social media, technology, et cetera, et cetera. But by the way, there's a gentleman who lives down the road who went on a daddy-daughter weekend, and they brought in a psychologist to work with the little girls, and then the dads worked. And I don't know all the details of it. He just told me about the first hour. He said we were taking in all the girls, to say there was 20 or 30 entrepreneurs or leaders, and they were taken into one room, and all the little girls, I think they were between kind of like 7 and 12, were taken off into the other room and to the right. And within 10 minutes, they heard this huge rapturous scream as if Santa Claus had just walked into the door from all the girls. And they looked down and they said, well, what was that? Oh, they've just been told that daddy's not allowed to use his mobile phone for the next 24 hours. And that to me is funny. I agree. I laughed when I heard it first. But when I sat with it, I went, oh my God, how frightening is that to some extent? So I saw an article about a year ago that what famous people eat for breakfast. Now, I'm not talking from an energetic, nutritional standpoint, which I get. But it basically said that, what's his name? Richard Branson eats this certain granola for breakfast. And the article was almost implying that if you get up at the same time as him, if you eat the same goddamn granola, you're going to have similar successful results. That is not my experience. The first time I heard about meditation.
So you've been eating this cereal?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Modeling is one of the most dangerous things on earth. Be inspired by people's stories, but make sure that you're following your own truth. The amount of people that I find I coach that say, I'm living my passion. I built this thing, but I still feel this niggling whisper in my soul. You're not, this is not you. This is not for you. And what they've done is they've built a business because they read the latest sexy book on how to build a business, working 2 hours a week, sitting on a beach. And this is what you model. And if you do this, this, and this, you'll achieve that. And what I find is that 99.9% of the time, you may achieve the results, the intellectual results, but you don't get the same emotional feedback or win or success because you know what, you're too busy modeling. I do not want to model Steve Jobs. I admire to some extent some of the things he did. I do not want his personal life. I do not want his relationships. I do not want the way he treated people around him, very close people. I don't want that. So I will not be modeling Steve Jobs. And if anybody else wants to, good luck with that.
Yeah, I wanted definitely to put that question in. So I have a lot of artist friends, a lot of performer friends, a lot of entrepreneur friends, startup people, creatives, people who are trying to do something that's their own in the world, like singer-songwriters, et cetera. And a lot of them are really challenged to stay the course, to find a way to get enough presence. I'm just wondering, what would you say to these kinds of people who are following their heart, following what they feel is their truth, their path, to encourage them to stay the course, to keep exploring, to keep experimenting, to find a way that it's, that it's worth it, that this isn't just a Pyrrhic adventure, that there is some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and that along the way they can also enjoy life and have enough means and I'm kind of painting sort of a perfect picture here, perhaps, but
Yep.
what kind of words would you share with people who are in that quest?
Give it up and go get a job. And when I say that, just check in on how that made you feel. And that'll determine your attachment to what you're doing. I'm not suggesting they get a job. I'm not suggesting they pivot and move away from what they love. But I find that so many people in the artistic realm, which are magical human beings, they're no better than anybody else, but they're magical. They've got something. But the attachment to what they're doing or the way they're doing it is strangling the living shit out of them. They think they're doing their best work. They're not even close. The greatest artists on this earth, the greatest musicians die with their greatest songs, their greatest paintings, and the greatest sculptures inside of them. They die with their greatest pieces of work, have never seen the light of day. And I'm not suggesting for one moment the work they're doing is not significant. I'm not suggesting it doesn't have meaning. I'm not suggesting it's not magnificent and beautiful. What I'm suggesting is the majority of people that I've worked in an artistic realm are so attached to the outcome that they're so, and they don't feel they are. They don't even know they are. They're so attached. And I'm going to give you an example. And it is an artistic example. And I've realized that artistic expression comes in so many different ways. I used to think, oh my God, I love artists. I have such admiration for people who paint or write songs. I'm thinking to myself, it took me two years ago, it took me 43 years to realize and to say I am an artist, because I create not music, but I create words. I write books. I create speeches. I create environments. And it's a degree of art. It's an expression. And to allow other people to find their artistic expression, essentially. But there was a lady who rang me. She says, I want 15 minutes of your time. I said, done. And I'd done some coaching work with her. And she comes on the call and she goes, I've just been approached to co-author a book with the biggest name in this industry in Canada. I said, great. So what do you think? And she's ringing me because she wants the truth, but she doesn't want to ring me because she doesn't want the truth. And she knows what I'm like. And I said, cool. I said, just one quick question, just before we get into the detail, just one little tiny question. How badly do you want to write a book on a scale of 1 to 10? She said 12 without missing a beat. I said, well, that's your first mistake. She goes, hang on a second. That shows dedication. That shows drive. That shows how much I want this, how badly I need this. And I said, exactly. How badly you need this. I said, when you're so attached to an outcome, you're blinded by the way in which you can make that happen. A single person who is so desperate to find companionship and love and physical warmth in their life, they're so desperate to find that companionship, which I believe is a mistake, that they're willing to compromise the person they bring into the life. And they're willing to look beyond some of these fundamental differences in who we are as a person, because they're so attached to the outcome. Because in essence, they believe deep down that if they don't have a companion in this world to journey with, they're not going to be fully fulfilled. They're not going to be fully happy, or they're not going to be complete. Mm-hmm. The work there is to work on yourself. And then if you find someone to journey with, that's a bonus. That's an advantage. That enhances your experience on this earth. I said, so number one, you're too attached to the outcome here. And that is a massive, massive mistake, because I believe you're willing to blindly move into relationships. Now that we've established that possibility, now she's pissed off right now. And I said, let me ask you one other question. Do you trust this man? And she goes, well, I said, yes or no? She goes, no. And I said, do you want your name on a book cover for the next 20 years with a person that you fundamentally do not trust? And you know what the next words were out of her mouth? Fuck you, McKernan. I promise. Because deep down, she's such a beautiful woman. And she's so courageous that she was willing to make that phone call to get in touch with her truth. But there was a large part of her brain that did not want to face the reality. She was pretty, almost depressed after it. Okay. But she honored herself, not me. She honored herself. And 6 months later, she woke up and she wrote the book in 6 weeks not that she thought would sell, but she wrote the book that was in her heart. And it went to #1 in Canada and Amazon in every category, not some minute, category. There's nothing wrong with that. It went to #1, like you name it, like it was the top book in Canada for months. And now she's gone on to create a business all about writing books. So that is an example of attachment. I'm not saying that's the answer. That's #1. #2, and we won't get into the details of this, is I also find from an artistic standpoint, people have a very unusual relationship with money. And I'm not here to sell books. We're here to talk about my work. But in a book called Rich on Paper, Poor on Life, there's a story about an artist who told me her biggest challenge was bringing money into her life for the things she loved. Turns out deep down, one slight issue that she was completely oblivious to for 40 plus years on this earth, she hated money. Completely did not know that, see that. And how is that possible? How do we walk through this earth having such a charge or perspective or connective feeling to something and be unaware of it? It happens all the time because we're human.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think and feel that the people are watching this that I know that are of an artistic vein and vision and desire and dream and everything, that's going to be meaningful for them. Thank you for that.
Who's the most attractive person at the bar? The person who's staring at the door waiting for the sexiest guy or girl to walk through and is desperate to get into a relationship. The person that's, and I'm sorry to be crude, but I'm just going to be crude to make a point. The person that's sitting there facing the door doing this, drinking their gin and tonic because they don't want a relationship and don't even look at them because they'll spit at you. Or the person who's sitting there calmly sipping their Chardonnay and is open to meeting somebody, but is not desperately needing it or desperately pushing it away. They are the single most attractive person on earth. The person that doesn't need anything is the person that achieves the most in this earth. If you're an artist, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, if you're in a relationship, if you're not in a relationship, if you're not in that space, there's something you're not addressing. 99.9% of the clients that I work with come to me and they want to work on X. Y is the issue. It's not X. And the byproduct of working on Y is X tends to look after itself or becomes clear in terms of how you can address it.
Are you kind of passionate about this subject? Or?
No, not at all.
That's great stuff. Well, let's transition a little bit and talk about your book that has released here called One Last Talk, which you're really calling, I guess, a movement. There's your live event that you've been putting on for several years in several countries, and I believe is going to be extending to, organically to other countries, if I understand.
Correct.
And of course, there's the book that just came out, which was a way to actually give people an opportunity in their own lives, wherever they are, to go through this process that you take people through, this experience you take them through actually in your live events. So actually now you can actually do this on your own or with others at home and get to the point where you finish the book with the commitment that you're actually going to go out and give your, one last talk, if I understand it properly. So tell me what's really the main message that you're seeking to get across to people, that people really, embody, that they take into their hearts and that they act on with this new book?
There's a story I heard recently of a man who went to hospital to say goodbye to his father. His father was dying, and the doctor comes out. It's a true story. And the doctor comes out and says, "It's time." And he says, "Oh, he's dying?" And he said, No, not yet, another few days. And he said, "Time for what?" He said, "It's time to have the conversation you should have had 20 years ago." And I feel that is in some way, shape, or form representative of the way a lot of us live. And a lot of us, I would say everybody, has a story, has a narrative, has, more importantly, a truth within them that we don't value, that we don't really like, and that we haven't really accepted. So let's think about it through the lens or a metaphor of a book. A lot of us, chapter 1 to 5 in our lives, will accept them. Chapter 6 and 7, yeah, they were dark times. Don't like those. Chapter 8, now I want somebody else's chapter. I want David's chapter 8. My chapter 8 was, I don't even want to think about my chapter 8 because it contains something that I did or something was done to me, something we're ashamed of, we're embarrassed about. And then chapter 9, I love chapter 9, and chapter 10 was great, but I talk about chapter 10 all the time because it was so pivotal and was so positive and so amazing. And our invitation and our challenge to people is everyone should write their one last talk. If you had 15 minutes or less to share your one last talk with the earth, with humanity, what would you say and who would you say it to? And it's not about global warming. It's not about Steve Jobs. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about what part of your truth could you share with humanity to do two things? One is to share your truth and to free yourself of it and to accept it, which basically means a self-acceptance of all of yourself for the first time you've ever had. The feedback and the breakthroughs the speakers are getting is off the charts. The second thing is by sharing your truth with the world and having the courage to do so, you allow humanity and other people who have shared the same pain, the same discomfort, the same joy to say, I'm not alone. Because there's a pandemic of loneliness on this earth. And I don't believe there's any greater way of mending that than to be vulnerable and to share your truth so other people know they're not alone and they're human too. And the ripple effect, and I'm going to give you one, what might sound like a dramatic example, but one example nonetheless, which just happened. There's a lady, Neely, who's featured in the book, who went through sexual abuse. And Neely she didn't even want to remember it, never mind talk about it in front of me or anybody else. And I live in this very privileged place right now where I've been given this opportunity until I abuse it or the day I die, where I've been given this privilege of sitting in front of people where they share everything with me on occasion. And over a period of time, I eventually went to Neely and I said, what would it be like if you share this on stage? And the invitation is, it's about you, but it's not for you. It's for humanity. Your pain, your discomfort, your shame, your embarrassment, whatever you want to call that, is about you, but it's not for you. And she stood on that stage in Boulder, delivered that one last talk, freed and let that story go, and accepted all of her in a way she's never done before. There's a lady sitting in the audience called Lena, who's a dark-skinned lady who had been developing white spots on her skin over 6 or 8 or 12 months, I don't know the dates, and no dermatologist, no blood test, no MRI scan could get to the bottom of it. And in that moment, her story came back into her life. Her memory came back that she'd buried in Pandora's box and built a metaphoric motorway on top and a hotel on top of that, and then moved a mountain and buried on top of that. And her story came back. And every day that passed from listening to Neely's story, as she started to remember and to acknowledge her truth, the white spots started to dissipate until she stood on a stage 3 months later in Toronto and told her story for the first time and looked over onto row 3 and said, I want to acknowledge Neely, who happened to be in the same room, because without her telling her truth and her telling her story, I wouldn't be standing here today. And so the ripple effect continues. That's why One Last Talk was created.
Yeah. Just letting that sink in. It's beautiful. Thank you. Wow.
It's not about me. It's not about me.
Isn't her video on your website, or the One Last Talk website?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll share that. We'll share that later with everyone. Wow. And do most people, do you feel, are is there usually one big truth that they're really, struggling with, that would be the most freeing thing for them? I mean, obviously we have lots of different things to share. This sounds like, this example you shared sounds very, I can sense how that's so poignant and powerful, and like everything in her life, changes from there, right? What about some of the other stories or examples? Are people usually kind of getting stuck in a way that affects their whole life based on one thing? I mean, again, the major things, I get that. when it's maybe less so? How do you see that people can have this one last talk? I mean, how does maybe someone who's not had, or not acknowledged, maybe if, well, let's play black and white here, has not had, such dramatic things necessarily in their life. What is their one last talk? What could that look like? What is from your experience?
So the biggest challenge people say to me is, oh yeah, I know somebody who's a great one last talk. His name is Henry. Her name is Sarah. Oh, they'd be amazing. In other words, they have a great one last talk. I don't. And people who don't have a very traumatic singular incident feel that they don't have a one last talk. And my experience is absolutely that is not true.
Yeah.
And here's something else I want to say, and some people will disagree with this, but that's okay. The pain that Neely and Lena, I'm using their examples, the pain that they experienced is absolutely no different than the pain that every other human being I've ever met has experienced in some shape or form. The circumstances are different. And in societal terms, the circumstances in which the pain happened to them is either way more acceptable, or in their cases, way less acceptable and way more dramatic and way more frightening and everything else. But the pain that we experience, the disconnectedness that we experience is exactly the same. So, for example, I've had entrepreneurs stand up and talk about how they're very successful and they've got, lots of money, for example, and they're seen as being successful, but they're not satisfied. And having the courage just to stand up there then puts it into perspective that people who put them on a pedestal and go, Jesus, I've been looking up to this guy. This is the guy. This is the Steve Jobs. This is the guy. I want his life. And he's actually turned around and said, listen, I have all this, but it's not perfect. And here's some of the things I would do differently if I could turn back the clock. It gives us both sides of the coin. It informs us completely. And then we can choose, do we want to truly model that person or not? So I gave you a dramatic example, and one I wasn't expecting to give. But there's lots of other examples. One man who had the courage to stand on stage and talk about, he said, Philip, I'm not ready. It's not wrapped in a bow. I haven't gotten back to where I want to get back to. I said, that's the point. The name of his talk was Everything is Awesome, Not. And he just talked about how he's going through a challenging time in his life. And the amount of people came up and said, finally, a speaker that's willing to stand there and not have his shit figured out. Thank you for giving me the space and the permission to be in my shit. Because when we go to events, we'd like to think we all leave inspired, but a lot of us leave feeling inadequate because we feel we're not doing enough in the world. We're not big enough in the world. And the subconscious message is, well, therefore you buy my coaching program and you can be fixed too, and I can help you make a bigger impact in the world. So we got to be very careful. So I gave you a dramatic example, but I don't want that to be the sole example of what a one last talk is or isn't. All of us have had challenges. All of us have a story. And I would encourage everyone to go through the one last talk process and deliver their talk to at least one other human being. And one of the best examples we've had of this is we sent it out to a committee of readers who knew me. We were biased and thought it was great. And then 10 readers who didn't know me, 8 loved it and 2 hated the book. I mean, the feedback they gave, we couldn't use it because it was so venomous and so destructive. And they hated it. And one guy was so mad. At the end of the book, he decided, screw this guy, screw this one last talk concept. I'm going to do this one last talk. I'm going to show this guy's full of crap. He delivered his one last talk to his parents, changed the relationship with his parents, and now he's our biggest fan.
I love it. That's genius. Absolute genius. Now, I know that this book is going to, the book and the event that you're bringing even more around the world is going to continue to liberate people to share really more who they are, what they have to bring, and to clear these things that have been holding them back. And like you say, it's going to help so many other people. There's this like quantum effect that happens, right? And so again, I applaud you for that. I read a quote that reminded me of you. Maybe you've heard it before. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Do you know who said that?
No.
Maya Angelou.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really great. Really, I thought of you when I read that.
I love that, and that is so on message, if you like, in terms of what we're trying to create here, and it's not easy. This has been a hard journey. This has been a tough journey, but I tell you one that I don't feel I have a choice around. Of course, I have a choice, but I don't feel it's bigger than me. It's way bigger. It's always been bigger than me.
Mm. So when are you bringing One Last Talk to Europe, for example?
So we are launching One Last Talk in Dublin on the 3rd of January, which
great.
makes me very nervous bringing this work to my hometown, if you like.
Mm.
And then we are looking for wonderful souls who have demonstrated the courage to be vulnerable, who don't feel they have it figured out. And then we're going to be basically creating training for them, and we're going to be bringing them through the process so they can run their own One Last Talk in their own city, in their own town, without the need. And it's not a big commercial thing. It's not 2,000 people in a room. We just want the right people, and there we're getting those people. They're coming to us organically, and it's working out nicely.
That's great. Well, we have a few more minutes here because I don't want to take too much of your time before we finish and kind of connect people to yourself. But why don't we do that real quickly? Where can we find One Last Talk online to buy it, bring it into our home, share it with others, buy it for Christmas, and give it as gifts to everyone and their mother around the globe? Where's the best place to find that? And we'll put a link in also.
Yeah, the book is available on amazon.co.uk.com and .ca at the moment, and maybe in different languages translated down the line. But for the moment, that's where it is. The Kindle edition will be out next year sometime. I'm not a big fan of consuming this type of content through electronic means, but we will have it available. And then onelasttalk.com is the website that has content, and the podcast went live recently, One Last Talk podcast. So that's the different mediums in terms of people, how they can connect with it.
Awesome. So no audiobook? I mean,
no audiobook, no. So
is that a conscious decision?
Well, I'm dyslexic, so people say, why don't you just do an audiobook? It'd be great. And I can't read the book to narrate it, which I know sounds bizarre, but I can't do that. So we're looking at ways to get around that. They're talking about,
I think that's an incredible entrepreneurial solution to be made to then share with the world, my friend.
Yeah,
You're surrounded by a lot of great entrepreneurs. I'm sure someone can help you with that.
Totally, we'll figure it out.
Because it'd be so great. You speaking the book would be just remarkable. For us to be able to receive that, like we're receiving you here. It's your medium, the vocal expression. So.
Well, that's why we created the podcast. I feel the podcast is doing that job, because I do an intro to the talk and an outro to the talk, and then we play the talk itself. And then also philipmckernan.com is my own website if anybody wants to, because sometimes they want to check out who I am, as opposed to One Last Talk is quite kind of Philip McKernan is removed from that to some extent. I don't want that to be about me.
Okay, we'll put that in there. So what are you feeling is going to be the energy of the coming year of 2019 for the planet and for everyone? Where do you feel everyone can focus their energy and their heart and their smarts to make a better world together?
I think there's going to be a revolution back towards simplicity. I think we're seeing it on a very basic level. I think that people just I mean, I even like something as simple as, turntables, or like, people playing records. I make coffee with this thing. It's a bit more of a routine or ritual, and it takes a bit more time. There's an AeroPress, and it just takes time. My brother says, why are you wasting so much? Like, why are you spending so much time on that? I think we're starting to return home. I've never said that before, but I feel to some extent there's this returning back to a simplistic place, returning back to ourselves to some extent. And I think therefore we can make decisions. And I think what's going to happen is the world is tired of being told what to do. The world is tired of trying to be successful, trying to do this, trying to do that. And I just think we're really truly waking up like never before. And I'm really excited about that. And every answer, everything we need lies right inside of us. And I think people are starting to wake up to that. And I'm encouraging that, even though I run a coaching business or a boutique coaching business, and we help people get in touch with that. I really believe that no one needs me to figure out. I think we get in our own way for sure. But I think, returning home is probably the best way I could describe that.
Beautiful. With these delicious, meaningful words, I think we'll call it a wrap right here at 1 hour. And again, thanks so much, Philip.
You're welcome.
For your time and your love and your energy, and for healing and contributing so much to the world in your own, unicorn way. It's really beautiful to witness and super inspiring for so many people. And so please keep going. Please keep sharing you with the world.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Take care. Thanks for joining us, guys and girls, wherever you are. Bye.
Ciao, everyone.